Hello and welcome back. I'm Randy Newbert from Voodoo Effects. Today we're going to be going over the ET ship lighting features. We're going to start from the bottom and work our way to the top. So let's get started. Okay, so what we're starting with is we're going to start the main lighting for the ET ship in the very bottom of the ship and work our way slowly towards the top. So the main objective today is to work on this lower engine ringlet that sits inside the landing base for the landing legs. And inside here, this consists of 9 perimeter lights. There is 3 outboard lights that are lit up in blue, and they come with these nice cast blue lensed parts that are all backlight, and this will stay all self-contained within the lower half of the ship. I will switch to the bench cam and give you guys a little more detail on how I'm going to actually fit these and get these into the model. So let's switch views and we'll get moving forward. Okay, so what we're going to be doing here is I've already made a decision to use our standard 12 port driver board in order to run these 12 outboard lights that are in the bottom of the landing bay here. So what I've done is I've already decided that I'm going to use a 2K resistor in order to cut the light back sufficiently so it's not overpowering the main thruster effect that's in the very bottom of the ship. And as you can see, I'll bring up the base here, and inside the base here there's the 9 outboard perimeter lights, and there's a center light that's going to be sitting right here in the middle. And the center light is going to be driven through a circuit board because it has a pulsing feature on the bottom. And I'll be using this pinkish lens in order to get the right effect out of the feature. And this will just sit down here in the very bottom, flush to the bottom of the ship. And then I have also these blue lenses that are around the foot areas that highlight the 3 foot areas on the bottom. And what I've included too, and I'll make sure that we put this in the kit, is I have a 4 light disc that will support these 4 button lights, and I can kind of hold them here. They're very small, but these are singular mounted, surface mounted diodes that are going to sit in these 4 positions and be wired around the perimeter of this area. And then when it's, when they come on, they'll be looking straight down onto the pink lens. So, and this will be included in all the lighting packages, this holder for the button cells for around here. So anyway, so let me move on here. I'm going to wire up and build the one board and build one LED up so you can see it being built. But basically, the circuit board is going to live probably somewhere in this vicinity to the actual base. And then this will supply all the wires, because this will get pretty full once I get everything inside here. It'll be pretty packed with wiring. And remember, don't cut your wire too short so you have a little bit of play in the wiring, because this also will have a top cover on it, and this is where the starting of the lower vent is. So this area, everything has to live down below this, and then there'll be one spot where I pull the master power cord, and the power cord for the board will also run up and through the whole system. And we'll get a little bit, this will be longer down the line, but this is a good start. So let me move on. Okay, so what I've done here is the LED driver board that I'm going to be using, this 12 port driver, is what's going to drive all the lights through the lower engine assembly here. And what I've done is I've basically have filled half the board with these 2K or 2000 ohm resistors. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to solder these down and then finish off the other three right down the line here, so I can fill up this board and take care of all those 9 perimeter lights. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and I'll do a little close-up on this. Grab a little solder. And again, like I've shown in the other videos, you want to be using a rosin core solder to do the majority of your soldering for your projects. And you will need a set of helping hands and a brass brush cleaner to clean off the excess. So I'm going to go ahead here and I'm going to start the soldering process. I am currently switching glasses so I can get a good view on my solder joint. And let's continue. So I'm going to go right down the line here. And I'm going to solder on each one. And what I'm doing is I'm soldering only one side at a time, so I can readjust anything to make the keep all the resistors in line well. And it makes a better looking project when it's done. So I'm going to take those out. I'm going to flip them over, and I'm going to make sure that they're pretty well aligned. I'm going to push them around just a little bit here and there. And that looks pretty good. So now I'll finish off the other side of the joints, solder those. Again, I can push these down a little bit. And I'm going to go ahead and solder these and being very careful not to slip over to the pad, because I don't want to be digging out solder, because that's where I'll be hooking the wires for the LEDs into these ports. So that should do that. Cut off the excess of the leads for the resistors, and I'm going to continue and do the rest of the other 3 that I need for the 9. I'm going to pick a little different resistor for the blue lights, because I want the blue lights to be a little bit brighter than these perimeter lights. And again, the reason why I went with the perimeter lights being lower is because I don't want them to wash out the effect on the engine pulse on the very bottom. So let me move on to the next phase here. Okay, so I've went ahead and I've filled up all 12 ports with the resistors. And again, the main resistors across the board here, the 9, are a 2000 ohm or 2K resistor to keep the perimeter lights down to a viewable look. And then over here I've put another 3 for the blue lights, and these are 470 ohm, and these will produce enough little extra light for the blue. And this should handle all the lighting, this 12 port driver, for the bottom of the engine area. So what I've done also, and I'll bring this up and kind of see, is a lot of people ask me how you measure for lighting for the wiring. And basically in this situation, since I'm going to have the board somewhere in this vicinity, how I do is I usually double the wire across, is always the kind of good rule of thumb. So basically, as long as I'm covering the whole perimeter of the bottom of the landing bay area here, that gives me enough room to get into every area, and still gives me a little bit of room to move back and forth in case if I have to. These ones will obviously be closer on one side, but I always leave them long because I can always bundle the wire up down here on the bottom. But if you put wire too short, then you're trying to struggle to pull the wiring over to the areas, and you don't want that. So always, on most cases, put your length of your wire all the way across the area as much as possible. Will usually give you a safety zone or a safety buffer in order to fit the light. So now I'm going to move on, and the next phase here is I'll be hand wiring one of these LEDs, and I don't think I'm going to show you all 9 of them being hand wired, but I'm going to go through the process of wiring the one, and then we'll go from there. Okay, so we're back getting ready to do some hand wiring for the perimeter lights. So as I've shown before, we're going to strip this wire back about 1/8 of an inch, and we're going to remove the wire, and we're going to twist the wire together so we don't get any fraying. And then it's very critical when doing this to make sure to put a little bit of shrink tubing over each area where the LEDs will be mounted onto the wire. And what we're going to do there is we're going to take the LED that I've already pulled out, and this is a 3mm white LED. Again, I like to bend the positive side over in order to indicate that that's the plus side. I'm using a brighter wire for my positive, so I keep my orientation correct, and I'm putting a darker colored wire on the opposite side, which is the ground or the negative. I'm going to slide them up the area here next to the marks where the LED's pinched. I'm going to go ahead and solder this one together and get that in camera pretty good. And we'll just go ahead and make this LED up. And I'm going to put the other side, more than enough. Bring it back here. We're going to cut these off. Leave a little bit of lead wire left on there. I'm going to close them up, seal them up. Again, take your little torch, even just a regular standard Bic lighter would work. Just any way to heat these up a little bit and get them to shrink onto the areas. Don't want to get them too hot, just enough to get them to seal up. And there's the built up LED, it's ready to go. And again, I'm going to bring up the base. I'll back up here a little bit with this look and what this is going to be. And let me get the base in here. I'm going to back up just a little and go a little forward. There we go. So inside here, where the base is going to live, and it's going to be inside here, these LEDs are just going to basically, they're already pre-set and pre-drilled out hole-wise, that they just sit right in there just perfectly. And when I go to fully do the mounting in there and fully put them in there, I'm going to basically go and just use a small amount of hot glue, and then I'll route all the wiring over to the areas wherever the board's going to sit. And I can pre-cut these as I go, but they'll be lengthy enough that they'll be under. And you want to stay under these, the landing bay areas here, because it needs to sit, everything needs to kind of sit underneath here. You don't want any issues when you go to put the vent assembly on there of it riding on any of the wiring, because then that could damage the electronics. So I'll be working my way all around this perimeter, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to build all 9 of them, and then I'm going to get myself prepared to build the lights for the also for the blue lenses as well. The last thing that I'll be doing is I'll be installing the final the engine pulsing feature in the very end, and those will be a little trickier to put all together, but I'll go through that phase as well. Okay, so what I'm working on right now is the button cells for the impulse feature. And what I've already done is I've already soldered 3 small solder balls onto the end where I'm going to hook up to actually, support it with wire. And I have to do this connection 4 times around, going in and going out of each port. And there's 3 ports for each one. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and solder this up, and it might be a little hard to see this because it's so small, but I'm going to see if I can zoom in here just a little bit. Maybe you can see the action. So what it's going to require is, again, I preset the solder balls on there, And what I'm going to do is I'm going to very, very easily touch this on here very, very quickly and just barely hold it on there in order to make the connection point. Once the connection point's made, all I need to do is just keep going down the line and just barely touch with the solder in order to solder it in place. So that's all you need to do, and I'll move on to the rest of the solder joints. Okay, so what we ended up here in the final finished piece is basically a pre-wired circuit board with all the LEDs on board, and here is the finished main impulse effect board, and these are all routed together and in here, and then these will be looking out towards the bottom towards the disc and mounted in here and then wired into the master circuit board in the finished buildup. And then there's basically, we're still at the same setup. I'm going to go ahead and put the LEDs in place and mount the disc piece inside here and put this all as a self-contained unit, and that should wrap up pretty much most of the that should finish off the lower lighting. I added a couple of features on here I wanted to show, and what I ended up doing in here was I ended up putting on some landing well bay lights, and you can see them in the model pretty well. And so I'm going to see if you can kind of get a fakey view, but you see the little pinhole in there, and when I put the LED through there, it's going to light up that little bay down there on the bottom. This is just another added feature, but I wanted to get it in there. So anyway, I'm going to wrap up this video, and I hope that I explained everything okay, and we'll see you on the next video.